Every time that I wake up, I don't want to open up my eyes again. Shout out everybody, but deep down I know I got no friends. Everybody use me for anything that they can, and I don't understand. I don't understand. I had a talk with God and he told me I need to wait. If I just sit down, he made me a promise that I'd be great, but I can't take the attention.
What's going on, everybody? It's Brazilian Father Podcast. I know it's been a minute since I've done an episode. Kind of been a little busy with life. Been a little busy with emotions and things of that nature. But essentially today's episode, I want to talk about having friends, acquaintances, coworkers, family members. You know, people that really bring value to your life, people that don't bring value to your life, people that just like to suck on your blood, in a sense. I know it's probably a weird phrase to mention, but just people that leech onto you to take whatever you can give them, people that use you, people that really have no benefit to your person, to your well-being. And I don't mean to break this into a negative conversation or negative episode, because there's some good in this, but it's kind of taking some reflection of my own time over 36 years to kind of realize like there's a reason why over the years I keep people away. I push people away. You know, I make friends quick and I lose them twice as fast. And there's a reason for that. You know, I'm a person that's straight to the point, very blunt. You know, no BS, no wasting time. You know, because life's too short. You know, I've spent the most of my adult life not wanting to be here. Most of my childhood going through probably the worst things that you guys can imagine. If you can name it, I've probably been through it. You know, and for a long time, it kind of defined who I am. And I've been working on it the last couple of months, last 6 months or so, to kind of change that perspective from my own mind frame. There's a reason why I am the way I am. And I don't expect people to understand. I don't expect people to feel sorry for me. I don't expect people to want to be around me, you know, because I could be a dick. You know, I could be very rude. I could be very blunt. And that's just how I am. You know, that's how I'm built. But I've never asked anybody to change. Or at least I don't think so. And if I did ask you to change, then I do apologize, because we're all who we are and what we are because of the experiences that we've been through in life. And so I do apologize if I've ever, you know, done anybody wrong. If I've ever belittled anybody, if I've ever made fun of somebody, you know, those weren't my intentions. Those were just things that I've kind of gone through in my life where I felt like I had to put the next person down, you know, because my life sucked growing up. When in the case, you know, those people didn't deserve any of the treatment that I was giving them. But I also want to, you know, share that we all have our good days, we all have our bad days. But the important part is trying to put your best foot forward every day, every moment that you wake up. You know, whether you're solo, whether you're married, whether you have kids, you know, whoever that person is or whatever the purpose is in your life that you want to improve, even if just a little bit, just 1% every day, you improve a little bit, then you should focus on that goal. You know, for me, it's kind of like if you're stuck in the same cycles, you know, is complaining really going to fix anything? You know, complaining about it, talking about it, if you don't try to improve, if you don't try to change your ways, is it really worth crying about? You know, especially as, you know, being a man, you know, nobody really cares what you have to think. Nobody really cares what emotions you're going to. You know, even if you think, okay, well, my significant other or my kids, you know, they don't want to hear that you're complaining. They don't want to hear that you're struggling mentally, emotionally, depression, financially. Like, nobody wants to hear that. You know, your job as a man, the way society has painted it, is basically you got to put on your boots every day and you got to hit the ground running. You know, you don't have time to waste. You don't have time to be weak. You don't have time to show emotion. You don't have time to cry. You know, and I've always lived my life very very emotionless, where everything was kind of bottled up, suffering in silence. And that was why initially I started this podcast, to try to get other people to open up, other people to talk, not so much about myself, but trying to get other people that have similar experiences to know that they have a platform to come forward to. And I know I've been struggling a little bit, it's been, my goal ultimately was to be able to do a podcast or two every other week, if not once a week. And, sometimes life gets in front of you, whether it's work, personal issues. It's kind of hard to continue to do this on a regular basis, and I kind of, was talking to my kids about it, as far as, trying to do their best, like they did good in school last year. This year you got to improve, do even better, so I set a goal for them. That way they can improve. And so that same concept goes to in your everyday life. If you set a goal for yourself, the worst thing you could do is fail, but it's not giving up once you fail. It's continuing to try again after you fail. And even if you have to fail a few times before you succeed, that's the ultimate goal, is to try to get to that goal, try to meet that goal, and try to, complete that goal. And so, going back to the friend situation, I don't really have any friends, and I like it that way for a reason. In my mindset, there's one less person that I have to worry about disappointing. One less person I have to worry about being available to, whether they need somebody to talk to. Because sometimes if somebody needs somebody to talk to, how can I be that person for them if I can't even get my stuff together? If I can't get my emotions in check, my own mental space in check, how am I supposed to give good advice to somebody that's struggling? So that's why I always kept it, very simple. The way I like to say is, I don't have friendships. I have coworkerships, people that I work with at work. As far as my family goes, I'm very private. I don't talk to my family much. And that's just because, of past experiences. And so, I kind of live in this solitary confinement, I guess you could say, in this, solitary environment, and it's kind of built like that in my mind. It's programmed like that as a default. I'm really trying to break that default setting, especially for my kids. And I think at the end of the day, they're the ones that my number one priority are. They always will be my number one priority. Is trying to show them that I'm going to show up for them no matter what the situation. Even if I'm having a bad day, I still show up for them, and I don't show that I'm having a bad day. They ask me, how was work, Dad? I'll be like, oh, it was good, thank you. Not knowing that it was a really rough day, but they don't need to know that. I don't want them to have to worry about me. My job is tough as it is already. I don't need them to worry. So it's little lies that I have to keep in order to, not have them worry about me, have them focus on themselves. And if you guys have kids, you guys know what I'm talking about. Not letting them see you, that you suffer, not letting them know that you had a bad day. It's like a default setting. And as much as you want to change it, when you go to change that default setting, at the end of the day, you forget to hit the save button. And so essentially, that's what causes a lot of these issues. And so I thank you guys for listening to me. Thank you guys for taking the time out of your day to watch this episode. And it's not to knock that having friends aren't good. There are good friends. I would say that I have one or two good friends that I really look forward to, having if I ever needed to talk to somebody. Those people know who they are. I don't have to reference them. I don't have to name them. But if it wasn't for them, I don't think I'd have anybody to talk to. So it's really good to have that one or two good friends that I know are there. And I hope that they understand that if they ever need somebody to talk to, I'm also there. I know I'm not very vocal. I don't reach out very often, but I'm there. My door's always open. Thank you guys for listening to me. You guys have a good day. That's the Resilient Father Podcast. I'll see you guys next time.
Wish I could say your name, wish I could talk to you just one more time.